We believe that life is better connected, and our aim is to help our young people find genuine friends and a supportive community. We also think that the best way to navigate this COVID season is by engaging together in smaller groups. We would love to help get them connected in this way by joining one of our Hangout groups. For any questions or further information, just email youth@forgechurch.com or check out the Forge website. Welcome to our second I Have Questions session. I love the first one and I'm equally looking forward to this one too. We're continuing our series that we started last week called Awkward, where we're looking at one of the most awkward things that you could ever talk about, and that is sex and our sexual desires. We've got an amazing panel for you guys tonight, and I'll introduce you guys to them in a little while. I just want to thank you for all the questions that you sent across. There are honestly some great questions, some real challenging questions, some real difficult questions to look at, but it's really good that you felt that this is a place that you wanted us to answer these questions for you. Now, there's some of the questions that I've kind of tried to group together as much as I can, just so otherwise this conversation could go on all night. But there's some of the questions that actually they're really difficult questions that I don't just want to give 5 minutes to tonight. So I want to do a whole session dedicated to those questions. So if you haven't found that your question has been answered tonight, then that may be the reason. So yeah, we'll look at doing that again later in the year. Okay, cool. So for now, let's look and introduce you to our panel.
Hi guys, my name's Matt. Some of you might recognise me. I used to be a part of the Forge about 2 years ago, but I still live here in Suffolk and still friends with these guys on the screen.
Hi everyone, I'm Emily. I work for the Forge, and yeah, I'm friends with Matt and the other guys on this Zoom.
Yeah. I'm Ben, and I'm pleased to hear that I am friends with the guys on this Zoom because I was unsure. But yeah, you might see me do some of the music stuff and tech stuff around at the Forge, and I'm here because I'm a sex expert.
Wow. That is a claim to start off your evening. Okay. I've got a question I haven't told you about, which I want you to answer. And that question is, if you were going to do a karaoke, what song would you choose and why? Matt, let's start off with you. What would your karaoke song of choice be?
Probably a Bruce Springsteen song, No Retreat, No Surrender.
None of the young people have a clue what that is.
Well, you didn't ask me that. You didn't say what song might I sing that the young people would know.
I'm gonna insert like a little audio of it at this point.
Mine would be Don't Stop Believing by The Journey. It's just a feel-good tune and I love it.
Cool. Excellent. Ben, what about you?
My karaoke go-to, because I've done a bit in my time, is Angels. I've got a great memory, like on my first like holiday with friends, doing that in a karaoke bar, and them handing out sparklers and everyone like waving sparklers and stuff. It's like a really cool memory, man. It was so good.
You have to have a good range for that, don't you? It's like low and high. Not that I know.
Yeah. I find it's always better after a couple of cocktails. You just really go for it, you know.
Okay, right. We're going to get stuck into our conversation then. I realise that this is the kind of conversation. There's going to be so many innuendos throughout the night that we're not going to have meant to do, and all the young people are going to laugh about it, and we're just going to be carry on. So let's just go plough through it. There's going to be lots of things.
That was an innuendo right there, Tim.
Yes. Exactly.
There you go, you see? Yeah.
Okay, so the first question. Now, this question came up loads from the young people, and it was a question that, a lot of the groups asked. And I've been involved in youth groups for a while, and Matt for even longer than I have. And this is a question that I've heard being asked quite a lot, and that is around the whole kind of conversation around sort of sex before marriage, and sort of people say, is that a real thing? What is that true for now? I know it was back then, but do we still have to abide by that? And why is this a thing? And that kind of stuff. So what are your guys' thoughts on the whole sex before marriage kind of thing that talks about in the Bible?
I mean, to answer your question, is it a thing? Well, yeah, I mean, it happens. Lots of people do have sex before marriage. But actually, I think the Bible's really pretty clear on this. If you go through the Bible and you look for the question, should I have sex before marriage, then you won't find that actual question. But Jesus talks a lot about what is called sexual immorality. And sexual immorality is this kind of cover-all phrase which covers everything to do with sex outside of the boundaries that God has set for us. And he sets some boundaries that are pretty clear in the Bible, that sex is to be retained within marriage, and that marriage is kind of long-lasting and it's enduring. And it might sound pretty unpopular to say that, and it might not be the answer that we want to hear. I think most of the time when we're talking about sex, we want to find all the loopholes and all the kind of ways that we can get around it. But I think it's pretty clear on it. And I think he does it because he says it because he wants to protect us. Yeah. He wants to protect us as individuals, and he wants to protect our relationships.
Yeah.
And he talks quite a lot in the Bible about when you actually have sex, kind of something miraculous happens and two become one.
I kind of agree with that. I kind of think that sense of, when we think about two becoming one, I think when you have sex with somebody, it isn't just a physical act. Actually, even like it has a real emotional side to it. Even if you're feeling really nervous and feeling really insecure, or really not insecure and feeling really gung-ho, this is like who I am, I'm very good at this kind of thing. There is an emotion
gung-ho in sex
and an action. I know I'm so going to be bad with all the innuendos. There's an emotional attachment, and so it isn't just a sense of like, obviously anatomically we know two become one, but actually there's an emotional connection that two become one. And I think when you think back over previous partners you might have, you can never quite rid yourself of that. And so when you then go into your forever relationship, which is what marriage is, you bring that with you. And that then becomes something that becomes a bit more of a complication. I always think we think of it like sex is this thing that we want now, but I think we kind of often have to think, what do we really want long term, which is quite a hard question to think about. But actually, what do you want for your forever relationship? Do you want to be in a relationship where they love you, you have intimacy, and you feel like you're special, you're unique, you're the one? Well, if you want that in your forever relationship, then you've kind of got to make the decisions now that allow you to have that in that forever relationship. And that's not to say that all marriages are forever. I know that isn't always the case, and lots of people won't have experienced that, but that's the ideal. That's what you're kind of wanting. And so therefore you kind of want to wait because you want it to be something you can experience in that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have like anything from a theological perspective to add, but just I guess just a few kind of thoughts. Like I kind of agree with these guys that like sex before marriage isn't God's ideal, and this is like such a thing. This seems to be such a topic that we Christians seem to put this in the worse sin bracket than other sin as well. And with that, and that's totally us, I think. And I think with that comes a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. And I think that's really, really unhealthy. And
can I come back at you on something on that, Ben? But is that all right?
Yeah.
Well, I totally agree with you that kind of that guilt and shame is really unhealthy. But there is something deep about the kind of sex sin. You know, when Paul talks about your bodies being a temple of the Holy Spirit, you know, when we sin against sex, we kind of sin against ourselves. Not that it's a worse sin, but it kind of seems to have some deeper impacts in our lives.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that I think we make it a sin that we feel like we can't, that God can't forgive.
Oh, okay.
And the shame that we feel is greater. I feel like we should feel like remorse or repent for sin. And I feel like, you know, we know that God's grace covers all sin. That's kind of an aside, is that I would just encourage people to not let this be a thing that takes them away from church. That's you know, we're all struggling, and you know, there are, you know, whether you believe there are kind of different levels of sin, this is not in its own category that's worth shying away from. The other thing I would say is like to whoever's kind of asking the question, and I'm sure it's like more than one person, but I have had like Tim and Matt and Emerald as well, like had that question so many times, and I don't think anything that we say will matter when you're put in that situation. The only thing that will change how you act is personal conviction from the Holy Spirit and relationship with Him. Because I don't think you'll be thinking about me when you're about to enter an area of temptation.
Well, I hope they're not.
Yeah, exactly. But do you know what I mean? But like experiences that I've had of people like that really want to kind of take this without wanting to use this term really, because making me sick in my mouth a bit, but like this path of purity can only come through relationship and personal conviction.
But with that, Ben, what I think I would say is you have to make that decision before you're in the situation, because in that situation you're going to find it, you're not going to be thinking about Ben, hopefully that would be the case, but also you're going to struggle to think through what you actually really think or believe in that situation. And so to already made the decision about what you want to do, so that when you get into that situation you can kind of be like, hang on a second, what did I say, who do I want to be, or what do I want long term for me, that holds you to a better account. But I totally agree with you, Ben, that it's that personal conviction.
And that kind of leads us on to kind of like dating and actually, you know, how we do this dating game well. And sex is a part of that. You know, sex is a part of, you know, relationships and marriage and what we would hope. But, you know, there's so much more about dating, about kind of when we should start dating, you know, who are the right kind of people that we should be dating, you know, before that, what does a healthy relationship look like, or what does an unhealthy and toxic relationship look like? So have you got any experience or any thoughts around kind of what dating should look like and what it shouldn't look like, and maybe some experience from you guys?
Well, I'll go first because I'll step out of this one, because I've not done the dating thing. And I always say, like, I've only ever had sex with my wife, but not through lack of trying. That's kind of like what I say, because, you know, I've only ever dated Kat, gone out with Kat, so I don't really have anything to speak into that.
I think you would have, though, as in like when you were going out though. So like you've got experience about what, you know, what was right in how you treated her and how you date, because I think, you know, teenagers, but actually adults as well, as about, you know, what should a healthy relationship. So what for you, the experiences you had of what a healthy relationship, you know, of how you treat Kat, how Kat treats you, your communication, what does it look like for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, like a healthy, I think it's really difficult. Like sex is really difficult when you get married, right? Because like me and Kat have had like similar sort of upbringing, and for your whole upbringing, right, you're told that like sex is sin. That's really hard mindset to get out of when you first get married. Like, it's not like a switch that it's like, this is okay now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, so I think that's really difficult, and something like that I kind of didn't expect to have to work through. But I think like good sex is like, I would say like when good sex is like 10% of a relationship, but bad sex is 90% of a relationship. So it's like if it's bad, it's like the biggest thing going on in your life, and it's ruining your relationships. Not because of the act of it, but what it represents. You know, are we not compatible? But good sex, like it's just something that kind of just ticks along if it's going right, and that's what I mean by that. And I think to kind of, you know, talking about dating and stuff, I think it's really important to establish a relationship that is so much more than physical connection, because actually that is the stuff that lasts. You know, like if you're attracted to someone, right, yeah, everything's going to go saggy, everything's going to go wrinkly. So fall in love with the person inside. Do you know what I mean? Like that would be like a fundamental for me.
They didn't do dating in the Bible, right? We haven't got a list of like 10 dating rules because it just didn't happen. The Old Testament and New Testament, you were married off like when you were 12 and 13. Certainly they arranged it, knew who you were going to marry. And so the Bible hasn't got this list of dating rules. But what it does do is tell us how to treat other human beings with respect and with dignity and with love. And so, you know, to answer your question, Tim, and to sort of take it on a bit, I think our dating, when we go out with someone, it should be to try and make them kind of the best person they can be, and them helping us to be the best person we can be. And I don't just mean in the kind of God arena, the Christian, but in every way. Now, it doesn't mean we go out with someone so they can help us. That's not what it's about. But it's about trying to kind of step up who we are to be the best version of ourselves. And actually, on an aside, I think kind of Christians, perhaps we need to step up our game in terms of dating. You know, some of the worst stories I've heard have been how Christians have kind of treated other people when they've decided to dump them over text, or, you know, pushing them too far sexually, you know, when they don't want to go that far, kind of pushing them, or cheating on them, or being unfaithful. You know, you don't need a list of dating standards written in the Bible to know, actually, that's not what God would want for us.
Listening to you guys, I think for me, I like what Ben said about I paraphrase it, if the sex is at its best when it's in its right place in your relationship. So, you know, that like whole thing of 10% and 90%, I like that. But I think that's born out of then actually, like, it's as simple as, do you actually like each other? Because I think you can sometimes date people because you fancy each other and there's that physical attraction, but you don't actually really, when you dig and scratch beneath the surface, like the other person. You kind of end up dating them because there's a huge pressure to be in a relationship with somebody. So this person said they like me, so I'm going to say yes to dating them until somebody better comes along. Because that's
not just to be in a relationship, but to kind of delve into it head over heels, and be like really intimate or really deep or really quickly. It's like you've been going out for a week and, you know, people are talking about getting married.
That's what it's supposed to be like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's what we think it should be like. Whereas actually, when you scratch below the surface, do you like this person and like how they behave? But also, do you share the same values as them? And I don't just mean, are they a Christian as well? But like, it's not about being the same person or liking the same things, but do you share the same values as them about life? Not that they can't teach you something or you can't teach them, but yeah, it will make life really difficult for you if you don't value the same things. It just makes it really hard. And so just look for somebody who shares that. And that you have that mutual respect, that, like Matt says, that sense of, you can tell a healthy relationship, because I think you like who they are, but also they help you to be the person you want to be. That hanging out with them helps you to be a better person, and that vice versa, you're hanging out with them, you help them to be a better person. You like who you are when you're around them.
And just to add, we're talking a lot about the kind of the physical act of sex, and I'd say don't give that away too quickly. But I'd also say don't give your heart away too quickly. There's a verse in Proverbs which says, guard your heart above all. And it's really easy for you to kind of give your heart away very quickly. And I'll just warn people against that, really, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think, like, just to add to something that Em said, I think, and say what I was saying, like, about feeling guilt and shame earlier, I think one of, like, the misconceptions is, or like a really awkward tension to manage is around sexual attraction. So, like, in a relationship, I think a lot of people feel ashamed of being sexually attracted to the person that they're dating. But I also think that is such a healthy part of what makes a relationship work. So I almost would, like, put a tip in of, like, being, like, really upfront and honest about that with someone, whether that even be, like, the person you're in a relationship with, of, like, actually, I'm finding you extremely attractive and I like that. Can we just go on loads of walks instead of watching movies on the sofa? Because
Netflix and chill.
Exactly. Like, or just like, oh my goodness, like you know. And I think, like, leaning into that attraction, like, you need that in a relationship, I think. So that's really, really awkward to manage, because you need to find someone attractive. And God's put that in you. He's put that, like, he wants, sex to be celebrated when you're married and when it's in its right place. And that's not something, I don't know if it's different for women, but it's definitely not something that we can pick and choose. It's not something that suddenly starts as soon as you've got a ring on your finger. It's like, this is just
when you've got a ring on your finger. It's not like you stop fancying other people just because you got married.
But Matt, for me, that's a huge thing about why the first answer of, like, sex before marriage thing, actually, like, how we interact around sex will determine how we view it within our marriage as well. So actually, the ability to kind of say, no, I'm going to wait, I'm going to have a discipline around that, is a discipline that you then take into your marriage. So it's that sense of, like, actually, if I'm willing to wait, if I'm willing to honor my wife or my husband or my girlfriend or my boyfriend in this, then actually I'm likely to honor them going forwards in this as well. Whereas actually, if I think that this is something where it's going to be kind of a, like, I don't want to say cheap, because sex isn't cheap, but, like, it's going to be a quick, yes, we want this and we want this now, then actually there's an element where that's what you'll take into your marriage. And that can have a knock-on effect in a different way.
There's loads of good stuff in there, guys. And again, I think there's some other things that we can pick up on later on. But around the whole dating thing, one of the questions, or I think it came up a couple of times, is about kind of about dating non-Christians. So for those that are watching that may call themselves Christians, and actually some people that are watching this that maybe are not Christians, that they probably think this kind of question is alien, or what does that even mean? Why would you not date a non-Christian? So in your experiences, why is that important, or is that important for you? What would you say about that, guys?
I mean, we can sometimes talk about non-Christians as if they've got two heads, and they're like, they're not. Non-Christians are not bad people. They're not evil people. They're not, in general. In many ways, they're as moral and as decent as we are. It's not that we're better people at all. That's not what it's about. But I think it is about what's your kind of path in life. Where are you heading? What are your boundaries? What are your choices? And for us as Christians, we're saying, look, we want to honor God first. We want to live like Jesus first. the Bible's important to us, and to be dating someone for whom those things are not important can create a lot of difficulties.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's insurmountable. It may not be insurmountable, but it will create some extra difficulties. When you're not both heading in the same direction, it can create some problems. That's what I'd say.
For me, I kind of think that it kind of touches on something Ben said about that sense of that conviction or that intimacy that you have with God already. That actually, if you have that relationship with God and you feel like he's a really important part of your life, and it's not just a religion that you follow, then I kind of equate it to this idea of, well, if your boyfriend or girlfriend really did not like and wanted to have nothing to do with your best friend, wouldn't you think twice about the relationship? And actually, God's more than our best friend. And yet, if the person doesn't have that kind of interest or is like very anti, then there's a big thing there that says, well, hang on a second, just like my best friend would have a big influence on my life, God has an even bigger influence. So how is that going to correlate? Like, you know, if your boyfriend doesn't like your best friend, well, one of them's going to go, your best friend or your boyfriend, and you kind of got to make the decision. And the same can be true with our relationship with God. So it kind of comes down to actually how important is God to you, and therefore, if he is like that, then there becomes a tension there. So it's not a tension that doesn't have to, like, that you have to then say, oh no, I'm never going to date a non-Christian. But you have to realize there's going to be a really tough tension that you'll have to live with, just like you would if your boyfriend or girlfriend hated your best friend.
The next question is, you know, when we talk about awkward levels, we're talking about sex is really, really awkward, but this is like a new level of awkward. It's like, it's up there. It's like off my screen level of awkward. That question has come across about masturbation, about, you know, is masturbation wrong? Is it something that you should do, shouldn't do? Again, what are your thoughts on that? What does the Bible say about it?
Everyone goes silent. They don't want to. I have to say, I think there's no subject that we can't talk about as Christians, and we should talk about masturbation, jacking off, whatever you want to call it. We should talk about it more often. From my perspective, and I'll be really interested to hear what Ben and Em have got to say. From my perspective, I've read the Bible lots of times trying to find this out. I can't see that masturbation is a sin per se, because it's not written as a sin. And I think if we add things to the list of sins, that's what the Pharisees did. And I don't want to do that. But the more important question is it helpful? So I may say it's not a sin, but I'd also say, look, there's some stuff we need to talk about with masturbation as to whether it's helpful. If it causes us to lust, then actually Jesus did talk about lust, and he did say that was a sin. If it causes us to kind of get involved in a lot of porn on the internet, I don't think that's helpful, and I think that's a sin. If we're masturbating a lot, it can become very addictive very quickly, and that's a sin. So I think a lot of things around masturbation can be very harmful to us, without the actual act being harmful. Does that make sense? Or?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. Anybody else has got anything to add to that?
I just think there's going to be a lot of people breathing a sigh of relief, because I think we've given the answers that people don't want to hear so far tonight, other than this one.
Okay. Yeah.
I agree with Matt. I'm sure, like, it'll sound like a broken record, but if anything causes you to go near pornography, man, just stay away from it. Like, I think that is more of a relationship wrecker, or I've seen it in people's lives, like more of a relationship wrecker within marriage. You know, like, you know, I've spoken to guys, it's not like addiction to porn doesn't stop when you get married. No, like, it's not, you know, it's a real proper issue. And if you can masturbate from a healthy place where you're not lusting, watching porn,
thinking about mathematics,
thinking about, you know, you know, if you can do that, which I'm not sure is possible. I don't know.
Yeah,
But I don't know if that's actually like kind of physically possible. Then, you know, I say with that, you know, go for it. But I would say like, I would like encourage people to stay away from things that can cause them to just not have a healthy outlook on sex. Whether that is porn, whether that's Game of Thrones, whether that is a comic book. Do you know what I mean? Like, and
you're saying I can't read comic books.
I'm actually saying it's different levels. And I think that's actually like, I mean, this isn't even a question, but it's bound to be on people's like the how far is too far question. You know, I think that's different levels. People like it, honestly, if you can't like make out with someone on a sofa without going to a place where you think you can't really control the next stage of your urge, I would say that's too far for you.
And
I kind of feel like the same around masturbation as well. You know, it doesn't really matter if someone else is involved. You know,
it's actually quite, in the end, it's quite a selfish thing, isn't it? I mean, by definition itself, sorry.
That's what I was going to say, Matt, is like, so I'd agree with everything you guys have said. And I also want to highlight masturbation is not just a guy's issue, it is also a girl's issue. But I think the thing that I know about it is that it's very self-serving. It's about self. So even if there's no lust involved whatsoever, the very fact that you are doing it is about getting yourself off and getting those endorphins or making yourself feel better through masturbation, whether that be about making yourself feel emotionally better through it or physically relieved from it. It's about self. And actually sex isn't about self. Sex is about two people and trying to mutually please one another. And so therefore masturbation, even without lust, doesn't set a good foundation for what you might have in a relationship, because it's self-focused and about your own need being met rather than about collectively. But I do want to say that there is hope there, though, because I think sometimes we can say everyone struggles and then it becomes everyone struggles and therefore it's okay. And rather than actually, no, everyone struggles, but we can choose something different and we can choose, differently there.
Cool. Kind of like the last question, but they've probably got a couple of other added questions at the end. You know, our young people that are going to be watching this have so many pressures from their friends, from society, from the media about so many things, but sex is probably up there with like one of the biggest pressures, the biggest peer pressures they have about you know, when they're going to have sex or if they've had sex and that kind of stuff. As a young person, how can young people deal with these added pressures? How is that possible to deal with this pressure?
I mean, first things first, like, I genuinely, like, my heart goes out to you guys, because I think it's harder than it's ever been. Like, I think just everything is sexualized everywhere. Sex is way more normal, way more accessible. So I genuinely really feel for you guys. But I guess my heart goes out to you guys, because I don't envy being in your position. I was going to actually just say, Matt, again about that verse in Proverbs about guarding your heart. And I think to put boundaries in place in your life, that like really like stupid but like vulnerable example from me is like, I really struggle with food and like eating really bad food. So every time, like, one of the measures that I have in place to kind of deal with that, what's the word I'm looking for? Not desire, but like temptation. That's the word, right? Is that like if I'm scrolling through Facebook and like I don't know, there's like food porn or whatever come up, I'll just block it. Block it. I won't watch Man versus Food. I'll block McDonald's ads for coming on my phone, just because it's like a constant temptation for me of like, I want that, and I know it's not good for me, and my body's simple, and like that's a decision that I've made, and I put up these guardrails in my life for these purposes, and I would encourage you all to do the same in your life when it comes to sex? Like,
But I have to put some boundaries in my life. Don't take your laptop to your bedroom, guys. If you're tempted to look at porn, don't take your phone to your bedroom. You know, leave it charging in the lounge. You know, real practical stuff. I've missed some, you know, parties, weddings, because I know it might put me in a situation where actually I may be tempted. I may, you know, fall. I may do something that I don't want to do. And I've missed stuff. You know, it's what Joseph did in the Bible. You know, when Potiphar's wife was coming after him, he ran. And I have to do the same and, you know, put some boundaries in your lives. You know, if you're just going to your boyfriend or girlfriend's bedroom, shutting the door and because you're going to help with schoolwork, well, we all know where that's going to end up. You know, if you're going in the car late at night to go and see the stars, you know, we all know where that's going to end up. So it's like, you know, put those boundaries, try and set yourself some boundaries so that you don't get there. Yeah.
For me, though, I think within that, it's not just boundaries that you personally set, it's having people around you who can help you with those boundaries. So it's like having good friends who share the same values, who share the same decisions, who can kind of help to keep you accountable to that. It's also having people who are maybe older than you that you want to have that input in your life. So like Ben said, like, I totally feel for you guys because this wasn't the world that I grew up in, and I definitely didn't have the same pressure that you guys have. But I have mentored people that have been through it, and just being able to mentor them and have them say, Emily, I want you to hold me to account with this. So I would ask them, how are you doing? How are you and your boyfriend doing? How are you and your girlfriend doing with this? And within that, just my asking, not because I was being nosy, like Matt would probably think I am, but because then I ask, no one wants to be asked that question, or at least if you're asked that question, you don't want to have to lie, because that's a whole other thing. So it's kind of having good people and good friends around you, but also within it, working out who do you want to be and what do you want, and then choosing to stick to that and make decisions in accordance to that. So, you know, like Ben said about who, like, he doesn't want to be somebody who eats that rubbish food, so he puts in those boundaries because he's decided that. But you have to make the decision of who you want to be before you can work out what boundaries you want to put in place.
Yeah,
I love the fact, what you're saying about talking to the right kind of people, talking to people that you trust. One of the questions that I didn't include actually, but I think it kind of it goes alongside that. Someone put along there, if you can't talk to your earthly father about this kind of stuff, how are we supposed to talk to our heavenly father about this kind of conversation? And I was like, yeah, that's a really good question. And that kind of actually that talks about, how do we talk to people about this? How do we talk to God about this subject? How do we do it?
I mean, anyone that chats to their earthly father about this sort of stuff, I mean, I have no, like, he's literally the last person. So I think it comes back to, like, just making it a normal part of your conversation. Like Matt and Tim will know this. I try and make sex a really normal part of conversation, because I know, like, this is in your series Awkward, Tim, but I kind of like disagree that it should be awkward.
Yeah.
Like, there ain't nothing wrong with sex.
It shouldn't be awkward, but it is. But it shouldn't be. You're right.
Yeah. So, like, I remember, like, me and Matt, like, talking on the regular about sex, talking to people that were just about to get married, like, about sex. And like that being more awkward for them than for us, but just being like, have you thought about this? Like, because when this happens, like, making that like super normal. And like me and Tim talk about sex like all the time. Me and my mate Finn, like real like interesting details. Like, how often do you have sex? Do you know what I mean? Like Tim, you asked me the other day, like, if I said I had sex the other day, when would you class that as? Like just simple
recently,
stuff.
It was recently.
Oh yeah,
that was the word. That was the key word, Ben. Like, but don't say any more, because my wife might kill me for having that conversation.
It's normal. It's normal.
Totally got to normalize it. There's too much secrecy around it, and that means you can't ask questions. Even within marriage, there are questions you want to be able to ask, not like the whole normalizing things, or just before you get married, just before you're about to have sex, particularly if it's your first time. You want somebody who's going to tell you honestly what that's going to be like for the guy or the girl, and just because no one talks about it, no one gives you an honest answer.
And if you can't talk to your parents, and actually they may be less embarrassed than you think they'd be, but if you can't talk to them, talk to one of the motion leaders. Talk to anyone really. You know,
we'll talk about it.
I mean? Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll come. Yeah, come and find us. We'll talk about it.
I think the important word is someone that you trust, isn't it? You have to find those people, because, and it's not just about the sex conversation, about anything in your life that you're struggling with. You have to find someone that you trust, that you can talk to and be totally honest. And
like, I was going to say, like, I love the question that the person said about, if you can't even speak to your earthly father, how can you speak to your heavenly father? And one of the things I love about God is that God has lots of different, I was going to say lots of different faces, but that sounds very much like a different religion. But there, you know, we describe God as God the Father, but we also describe Jesus as our brother and our friend. And so, you know, just try to imagine that you're talking to your friend, because the Bible tells us that he is our friend. And so rather than seeing him as God the Father, like he's some authoritative figure who's going to frown on you and look down on you or judge you for your behavior, think about talking to Jesus, the friend, who is there to walk alongside you, who's there to lead you and show you how life lived to the full, what that can look like. And then you can talk to him really honestly and openly about it.
Anyway, you're not going to surprise him.
Yeah, no, they're not going to.
Oh, I never realised you fancied him. Oh, really? You do that?
You're not
going to surprise him. So he just loves the fact that you want to talk to him about it. So yeah.
Guys, this has been brilliant. I think that's a really good place to end it on. So I really appreciate it. It's been insightful for me, and I know the young people will have loved this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate your time. Wasn't that so good? Like, I really, really enjoyed that conversation. 3 amazing guys that I've got a lot of respect for, but I really just enjoyed the conversation too, and I learned a lot from it. I hope you guys did as well. Now it's your opportunity to continue that conversation as you go into your Hangout groups. If this is your first time and you don't know what Hangout groups are, Hangout groups is just an opportunity for us to kind of dig a little bit deeper, to kind of ask some more sort of important questions maybe, or just to kind of hang out with people that are like-minded like you. So if you head over to our Instagram page, which is Forge Youth UK, there's a link in there which will take you directly to a link for the bios of each Hangout group. Now, if you would like more information about this, please just get in contact with me, youth@forgechurch.com, and I'd love to get you connected in with those groups. But for now, I'll leave you into your Hangout groups, and I'll see you back here next week as we start a brand new series called Afterlife. Check this out.